somewhere here. All right. So, Dallas, what is the difference between righteousness and holiness?
Oh, I think you skipped a few things.
I did. I did. We'll come back to the one I skipped there.
Okay.
Yeah, I skipped one of them, so we'll come back to that one.
All right.
What is the difference between righteousness and holiness?
All right. Difference between righteousness and holiness. All right. So Oxford English Dictionary defines holiness as the state of being holy. And the definition of holy is dedicated and consecrated to God, or a religious for a religious purpose, sacred, or morally and spiritual excellence. That is what holiness is. Righteousness is the quality of being morally right or justifiable. The definition of righteous is morally right or justifiable, virtuous. So righteousness is the condition of being proven or declared morally excellent. It's more of a legal standard.
Yep.
Whereas holiness is the condition of being consecrated and dedicated. It is a spiritual aspect of being set to the side.
Yep.
And so that's the difference between righteousness and holiness, which leads us into our next question that we actually had, which is the difference between holiness and sanctification.
Yep.
You want to enlighten us on that one?
Yeah, well, the difference between holiness and sanctification. Holiness is I like to think of once we come into righteousness, righteousness is declared upon us by Jesus Christ.
Right.
Why? So that we can be holy,
Right.
so that we can be set apart and separated for God's use.
Right.
We come into the doorway of being able to be called holy, not because we are, by being declared righteous by the blood of Jesus.
Right.
And now we enter into this process called sanctification. And sanctification is that lifelong process.
Right.
It's a process that we go through of being consecrated, of being dedicated to the Lord. It's a process of how we become holy.
Exactly.
And this is a day-to-day thing. I like to say it's every day being less like I was and more like who Jesus is.
Right. Absolutely. I believe that the technical term is progressive sanctification.
Yes.
And this is one of the things I tell people often, just because I'm there's so many people that I've ran into that they get saved and they get like 2 or 3 months into living that lifestyle and they make one mistake.
Right.
And they're like, I failed, life sucks, I'm a terrible Christian. And a lot of them, some of them just give up, or unfortunately, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to tell a story. I might tell a story here in a second. You got some people who put unfair, inappropriate expectations on people.
Right.
With no discipleship.
Right.
And if there's one mistake, we just throw them out the window.
Cast them to the side, yeah.
I remember years ago I was talking with a cat, and he, bless his heart. We were talking, he was voicing his frustration about seeing people come to the altar, give their lives to Jesus, and 2 weeks later seeing them back in the world doing what they're doing. And so we're talking, I get that frustration. I'm like, man, God has a purpose for these lives, and what's going on? So I asked him, I was like, bro, like when you see that happening, we see these people get saved, do you go and talk to them and like walk them through stuff? It's like, no, they should just know. They need to read their Bibles and do what God says. I'm like, pause.
Right.
I was like, hold on a second. I was like, that's not how this works, man. And
that's asking a newborn to feed himself.
Exactly. And the problem is he was one of those individuals who was blissfully had a parents who were Christian, and he was raised in church. So he was just raised, you read your Bible, you do it, which is great. But even at some point he had to own it, and he was missing that fact. It was almost like, it was interesting because when you are raised in blessing, you miss the magnitude of that blessing sometimes. He was missing the magnitude of understanding, I got to read my Bible.
Right.
And so when he saw people doing that, I was like, bro, you've got to go and help these people.
Right. And different people come from different places and different avenues and different backgrounds and different struggles and different. God is saving us all from sin, but that looks different.
Right.
So that process of growth, of becoming more like Christ, that story is written very differently depending on the individual.
Exactly. And so it's a process. My story of coming to Christ and being where I am now, which again, I'm not saying I'm perfect. All right. If anybody tells you they're perfect,
they're not perfect.
Walk away from them. But I'm growing. Where I am today is eons beyond where I was in 1999 in Ash Grove, Missouri.
Absolutely. And we get to point all of that back to Jesus.
Exactly. And so there's a growth process. And so we can't look at people and go, we expect you to be perfect. It is a process of growing and becoming what God's called us to be. And we need a community to show us grace to help us to go, all right, you messed up here.
Yep.
Let's get up, dust it off, what's correct.
Yeah.
Appropriately, and become what God's called us to be.
All right.